Talking Allergies is a podcast focused on raising allergy awareness, sharing allergy stories, increasing allergy health and well-being, connecting the Australian allergy community with those that support them, and more. In each episode, we look at different aspects of living with allergies, with special guests joining us to talk about all things allergies.
Hi Aneleise, and welcome to Talking Allergies podcast.
Thanks, Grace. Thanks for having me.
Very much appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit about your book and a little bit about your allergy journey with your daughters.
Yes, it's an interesting journey, that's for sure.
To start off with, could you talk a little bit about you and your daughters?
Yeah. So, my name's Aneleise. I have two young daughters. One is now almost 3.5 and just gone 1. So their names are Mackenzie, she's 3, and Zara is 1. When Zara was about, she was about 5 months old. We had an accidental exposure to some banana bread. I was at my friend's house and Mackenzie was eating the banana bread and I was just holding it for her, and Zara was on my lap, and she was, getting to that age where they start to explore food. She was already interested, and she reached for the banana bread, stuck it straight in her mouth. And one of my friends had actually made it, so I was like, oh, what's it? I was like, oh dear, we haven't tried this yet, let's get that out of your mouth. But there was a few things in it. So they had egg, I think there was some nuts in there, there was wheat, I'd only just started solids, so we'd only done a few, fruits and vegetables, nothing else really. And so I was kind of like, oh dear. And anyway, she was fine. And then we went home, and then later that day, I was putting her down for a nap, and I just had some lunch, and then she sort of, I'd put on some teething gel in her mouth, because she was, a bit unsettled, which now I know why, but I thought she was teething. And she wouldn't go to sleep, and I thought, oh, this is like so frustrating, but she's my second, so I don't fight sleep with her as I did with my first. So I put her down on the mat in the lounge room, and I just sat down, which in hindsight was super lucky, because I probably would normally have been like, all right, I'm going to put some washing on, or, leave the room for a minute, but I don't know why. I just sat down, and she started to make some weird sounds, and I sort of thought, oh, that's a bit weird, like husky sort of sounds. And I went and had a look at her, and she was starting to get rashes all over her, and I thought, oh, that's strange. And I pulled down her top and lifted it up, and she was starting to develop hives. And then from there, she began to swell. Her face swelled, her neck swelled, her lips swelled. And I was like, oh, I think she's having an allergic reaction to something. So we called the ambulance, and they were really great, actually. I cannot fault. I'm in South Australia, so we have a really amazing ambulance service, and my experience with them, we've had to call them a couple of times now, have been fantastic. And they came out, and I was on the phone, and the people on the phone even are so amazing. They just keep you calm and get you to look for things, and and so anyway, that was sort of our first experience of an allergy for her, but it was interesting because we couldn't really pick what it was. So it wasn't an instant one, which I know I've now gone and roundabout kept going through the questions, but I'll stop there because I'm going ahead of myself, I think.
Yeah, you can go ahead of yourself if you want to.
Oh, you sure?
Yeah.
All right. So we went to hospital. Turns out they thought she was allergic to the teething gel that I had put in her mouth, because that was the most recent thing that she sort of ingested. So, we went away from that hospital visit with her being 5 months old. So they'd had to give her adrenaline in the ambulance, or when they got there, which she took to really well. The swelling went down, the hives went down, so that was really good. And because she's so little, it's really hard to tell. She had that raspy sound, so they just sort of didn't really muck around with anything. They just gave her the adrenaline, which seemed to work really well. So we went home, and I thought, oh goodness, that's such a weird. So they thought it was chlorhexidine, which is a common drug that's found in, or I don't know if drug's the right word, but chemical found in things like toothpaste or hand sanitizers, things like that. So I was like, oh goodness, this is I'm gonna have to look out for what's this involved in. And then so that was she was about 5 months old, and then when she hit 6 months old, so from that I was a bit, that kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't really we'd never had any food allergies with my elder child, with Mackenzie. She didn't have anything. So coming into starting, like at 6 months, we started to do the top 9 allergens. Is it 9 or 11? The top ones. And so we started with wheat. And I thought, oh, who's allergic to wheat? No one. So that's how much I knew at the time. And anyway, we gave her some Wheat Bix. And on her first try of it, my husband did it, and she didn't really eat that much, but she had a bit around her face, and she ended up getting a bit of a contact rash. But we were not blaming him. We were both kind of like, oh, is that something? I'm not really sure. She seemed to enjoy the Wheat Bix. There was no further real reaction. She did probably have a bit of an eczema flare up from it, but the next day I gave it to her, and I gave her heaps of the Wheat Bix, and about an hour later, so it was quite a long delay between when we first gave her the food and then when she reacted, she started to develop hives. She was really unsettled, and that was sort of the first thing. And when I was feeding it to her, I said to my husband, I was like, I'm sure this is giving her a contact rash. So around her mouth, she was getting red rash. And I was like, I'm sure that's what it is. And then, it's so hard in the time of it. We were like, oh, is it? Anyway, I was like, I reckon that's what it is. And then it was literally about an hour later, she started to develop hives again, and then started swelling. And I said, I reckon she's having another allergic reaction. We gave her antihistamines as part of her allergy plan, was to trial antihistamines, but she just kept getting worse. Her neck started to swell, and I said, nah, we're just going to call an ambulance. And so we had an ambulance there for the second time in four weeks. And it was one of the same people came out as well. And he was like, not you guys again. And I was like, I know, yeah. But same thing. So her neck started swelling, her face started swelling. She had hives all over her body. And so they gave her the adrenaline again. And we took another trip to hospital, and then they sort of said, we think she's allergic to wheat, because that was the only thing we'd given her. We were very careful to not cross-contaminate, so we gave it to her with water, not milk, all those sorts of things to try and really narrow it out. So yeah, from 6 months of age, we then had to change a lot of stuff in our life. I was breastfeeding at the time, and so I had to also go wheat-free, which, I guess it's hard it's hard as a parent trying to get your child to eat that, but as a baby, they've never had anything else. They don't really understand. For me, it was a really big lifestyle change, because I eat wheat every day. It's a very common food what was a common food in our house. So I had to change a lot of things in my diet as well, because I was breastfeeding, and we found that when I did cut it out, but there was a lot of information that started to be like, oh, you could keep breastfeeding and eating wheat, and just see that little bit of exposure for her. But for me, I was kind of like, well, it's still causing flare-ups of her eczema. It's still upsetting her stomach. It's not worth it. So I gave it up as well. And then as we've gone along, we have found some other allergies. So one as recent as this week we've discovered, but so we went and did skin prick testing. So and I guess that's a part of the story I want to share as well, is around the medical system, and how I sort of really advocated within that space we were in public, to get her seen as soon as possible, which I think the wait times are so long for a lot of families, can't see and get the help that they need when they need it. So I think that's a real challenging aspect of that space as well, is the medical side of things. But we've learned she's allergic to egg. She's lactose intolerant. So the egg was confirmed through skin prick testing. Lactose intolerance has been determined just through trial and error. And then this week I think she's allergic to strawberries as well. So we've got a follow-up review next month with the allergist. So I'm going to ask if we can do some more skin prick testing to try and rule out a few other things. Interestingly, with the skin prick testing, she came up negative to wheat, but we went and did further blood tests, and she's she is allergic to wheat. So, I guess it's tricky because, not all tests are 100% accurate either. So it's definitely a space I've learned a lot about, I think.
Aneleise, you did such a great job in being able to call the ambulance, but not knowing anything about allergies to going, oh, she's having a reaction, let's call the ambulance and see what's going on, and then up to the point of actually giving them adrenaline, probably in the ambulance or at hospital.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, my first call was to my husband. I called him and I was like, I think she's having an allergic reaction. I'm not sure. Like, I've not seen it before. And he was like, well, go to hospital. Go to hospital. What are you doing? And then I was thinking to myself, I've got a 3-year-old, and well, she was 2.5 at the time. I've got a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old. By the time I get them in the car, load them into the car seats, get down to the hospital, get a car park, get into I was like, it's too long. That's too long. She needs someone now. So I was like, right, I'm just going to call an ambulance. And even that wait felt like a lifetime. Honestly, it was, when I looked back, I had to look back later and see how long the call was, because they stayed on the phone with me until they got there. It was only 10 minutes. Felt like forever, because as I'm talking to them, she's continuing to swell, her lips are swelling, and I had nothing. I had no, like, at the time we had no EpiPens or anything. I had nothing that I could do. I was just like waiting for someone to come. It was very, very stressful, and something that has haunted me, for lack of a better word. Like, I think you will never forget that first time your child has a reaction like that, because it is probably one of the most stressful things. And I think for me, I've had to do a lot of work around my mental health following that, which I guess is also another thing I would like to talk about maybe a bit later, but because it's just so confronting to see your child so helpless, and for yourself to feel so helpless as well. There's nothing I could have done more in that moment than call an ambulance. So yeah, very not a great time.
No, but you had the right knowledge of what to do and to call, and you've done absolutely amazingly in doing that. And then, going through the process of getting tested, going through, okay, we'll go through the breast milk process and how that goes.
Yeah. And interestingly, when we were in, so we went to emergency, the pediatric one, but when I was in there, even to the point that, and I'm the care across the board has been fantastic. And, I don't want to, I guess everywhere has areas that they could improve, I guess, but overall, fantastic experience. But, even as the people that I saw there couldn't really give me an answer about the breastfeeding and about whether or not I should stop eating wheat myself. And it was only sort of, I guess they would neither here nor there gave me an answer. And so I had to do a little bit of my own research afterwards. And then I spoke to the allergists as well, but it was sort of a decision that I had to make at the time, which I think is the right one now. But I think it was a tricky situation because, no one could really give me an answer. And even when you look online, for answers, Dr. Google, I suppose, there's different streams of thought, I suppose, in around, small amounts of exposure and how that could be, beneficial, and then, whether just abstain completely. So, it was a bit of a tricky situation to navigate. But, no real answers, so.
You talked a little bit about how your life changed from getting diagnosed, or even from that reaction. Could you talk a little bit about how it did change?
Yeah, so I guess we had to, so obviously I have an older child as well, so she was 2.5. And, things we had to implement to create safety for Zara. So we had to, for example, some of the changes we've made is that all our snacks for the kids are completely gluten-free, allergy-free for what she's allergic to. So they're gluten-free and egg-free. Because for me, being able to manage my own worries and anxiety and the safety of, kids just drop stuff, they spill things, and it was coming to a point where it was pretty early on. It was within the first week, and Zara was only just sort of on the move, like she was sort of rolling, not really crawling, but I was thinking, like all it takes is her to, grab it out of Kenzie's hand or, and then put it in her mouth, and then that's all it could take. So I kind of was, so all our snacks are gluten-free and egg-free. We eat, all our dinners are gluten-free and egg-free. We also do, I do allow normal bread, like non-gluten-free bread in the house. But Mackenzie had to learn pretty early that she needs to sit still at the table so if we're ever eating foods that Zara is allergic to, we confine it to, you have to sit at the table and you need to sit still, and it's still a daily conversation every day, and Kenzie is at an age where she'll ask me, she'll say, oh, can Zara have this? And I'll say, no, Zara can't have that. So you need to sit really carefully and make sure you're not spilling. So it's tricky because I try not to, I don't want her to feel like, it's tricky. I don't want her to have to deal with something that's beyond her level of age either. But also there is that level of she does sort of understand. And I guess that's what led me to write my story, my children's book, is that anything that I've ever had to explain to Kenzie that I've struggled to explain by talking, I've tried to find a resource, and through that is like a book. So, we got books around toilet training, we got books around giving up your dummy, we got different kinds of books that I felt were important to help her understand why we might be doing something. So I had a bit of a look around for books around food allergies. There are a couple out there, but I wanted something that was more, I guess, in line with the kind of message I wanted her to understand, around why we have to be so careful about eating the foods, because what can happen if you were to eat it. And I think for her, she obviously saw it. She talked about, this is Mackenzie, she talked about the ambulance coming to our house, and Zara's been in the ambulance, and so she knows what's happened. But for 2.5 or 3-year-old to understand exactly why we have to make so many changes and why I'm so careful, and perhaps maybe a bit of understanding around why I might be a bit pedantic about food things as well. But honestly, it's still an everyday conversation in our house. She'll ask me, can Zara have this? Or we've changed a lot of things. So this year, for example, every year we make gingerbread houses, and the thought was just giving me so much anxiety this year because she's old enough, she's walking, if she were to, and also she's at the age where she wants to eat the same things as you. So she'll point and she'll be like, I want that and I want this. And so we made gluten-free gingerbread this year, which was, I actually didn't mind it. It was a different kind of consistency. But Kenzie was so excited when she said, oh, can Zara have this? And I said, yeah, she can have this. And she was like, oh, like so excited to be able to share that with her sister. So just little things that you take for granted that, that they can do. And I guess we've had to change a lot in our house. And we have separate cereals, and I sit at the moment, because Zara's still in a high chair, I can move her away from, Kenzie if she's eating, normal bread and things like that. So there are ways, but as they get older, well, the allergist that I saw said it actually does become a little bit easier as they get older, because they start to understand themselves what they can and can't eat. I'm not sure what age that is. It's not yet for us, but I'm looking forward to that. I think when they're at that age where they put everything in their mouth still, she's so sensory and putting stuff in her mouth. So it makes it really tricky to manage. So we've just had to change a bunch of stuff to try and appease my anxiety around it, but also create some safety for her, because things happen so quickly as well.
It's lovely that you were able to accommodate with the tradition of doing the gingerbread, but actually making it gluten-free and then making it a family occasion and that she was invited into. That's lovely.
Yeah. I mean, she didn't get to decorate them because most of the lollies were not gluten-free, but she's also a baby, so she doesn't need to eat lollies. But just being able to try some gingerbread and stuff, it was really nice to have that. Yeah. So yeah, thanks.
With the support in your life, who offers support and how have you received that?
Yeah. So probably my biggest supporter is, it's going to sound really sappy, but my husband, Ben, he has been really good. I think for me, like I said, my anxiety has been quite high. My mental health took a bit of a turn around it all, and he has been really supportive of me getting help for my mental health as well as like the book stuff as well. So it's been really good. And I think, yeah, he's the opposite of me. So he's like, I'm very, what's the word? Is it type A? Where you're very, like to be organized and have things set. And whereas he's really chilled and relaxed and he's like, it'll be fine, which sometimes drives me mad, but also is really helpful, I think, to balance out some of my little tendencies to be a little bit overbearing. So that's really good. We have a lot of friend support as well. So most of my friends and things have been really amazing with reaching out and supporting, and if they come over, they'll bring gluten-free options and things like that, which is really I think you can't underestimate how much that can really help with feeling like you're being understood. So even I had a friend message me today to say, there's this new cafe opening. They have a whole bunch of gluten-free things there. And for me, I'm like, that's so nice because you've thought of me and, you recognize that I'm, not necessarily needing support, but just you're recognizing where I'm at in my journey of needing things to be, I guess, a bit easier in some ways. So, I think parenting is hard enough without having extra stresses and burdens and things, and it's not even like it's a genuine stress. Like it's not even like my own perception of I have to be like this because for example, my house has to be clean because otherwise it means I'm a bad parent. This is like a life or death situation where it's like I have to be really careful or else my child will get really sick and potentially could die. I think that's really nice. We've had a lot of family support as well. But a lot of it is, I think you've got to learn to manage it as well within yourself. And for me, going out and eating has been challenging. I think that's something that, with Mackenzie on maternity leave, I'd go to the shops and get a coffee, and I'd get her a little baby chino. And for Zara, she's only just had her first one and it was lactose-free milk, no chocolate on top, no sprinkles. Like you can't have any of these like fun things. But I hadn't done it just because I was so anxious about having to, I think eating out is a big risk, which I think a lot of parents would agree that when you go out to eat, that's the most stressful because you've got your cross-contamination risk, as well as people not understanding the allergy, or even sometimes I get stressed when the waiters deliver food over the top of her. I'm like, can you not? If you drop that on her, that could be disastrous. So I find it very stressful going out to eat still, but I think that's, for lack of a better word, not normal, but I'm in a few groups around with parents who have children with allergies, and that's a very common thing that's discussed, I guess. And yeah.
Is there something that you've learnt about allergies that you would not have known prior to starting the allergy journey?
Everything. I was probably really unaware, I think, of allergies in the sense that as a child, I was allergic to cow's milk protein, and I've outgrown that now, but I'm now lactose-free myself. My husband is anaphylaxis to bees, but he's done he partly did the desensitization program. So we were unsure, but we think he got stung a couple of years ago and he just had sort of the swelling of his lips, but he went to hospital for that. So around that, my sister is also allergic to ducks. So which is funny because I've written a book about ducks, but she's allergic to duck. My half brother is allergic to seafood, and he was allergic to eggs, and my cousins are allergic to nuts. So we absolutely have allergies in the family, but I think it's different again when it's your children that experience it. So despite the fact that I have, you know, a lot of people in my life that I have allergies, I think it's different when it's your kid because, you know, I guess you're responsible for them as well. And, you know, I probably prioritize their lives and well-beings and health well above my own. Not that, you know, like if I have a little bit of lactose, I'm fine. But, you know, when it's, and I guess too, the level of allergy is also, you know, when it's anaphylaxis, I guess that can be really stressful. But also the impacts of non-anaphylaxis allergies is also hard to manage. So at the moment we're doing, Zara can tolerate egg baked in things, but it does give her a bit of a flare up of her eczema. And even that like is hard to manage and keep on top of it, and she's uncomfortable, and you know, so it's, you know, I don't think it's necessarily one is, I mean, you know, they're all having allergies, I think is difficult regardless of what the reaction is. I think any kind of reaction is a very challenging thing to be able to manage, and as a parent as well, because it's my job to do it. So makes it a bit tricky.
With the ladders and doing that process, could you talk about your own mental health with that process?
Oh, it sucks. So because we did the skin prick testing, we came away with a bunch of nuts that I hadn't, I'll preface this by saying, we went through the public system and I was on a wait list. The wait was over 12 months. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is so stressful. So what I did is I went on the cancellation list, which I would recommend all families to try and get onto the cancellation list. I was fortunate enough that I was still on maternity leave. So I said to them, I can be there in 30 minutes. Let me know. I'm not working. I've got my child. I can be there in 30 minutes. I was very fortunate that on one of the days that I just called up every single week. And I said, do you have a cancellation this week? You know, I'm willing to come in. And one of the, I think they felt sorry for me. One of the ladies was like, yep, let me get back to you. I've got this one. I think I might have a spot. Let me just confirm and I'll get back to you. And so she called me back and she's like, yes, you can come in. And I was like, thank goodness. So I think Zara was about 8 months old. So I only waited about 2 months from finding out she was anaphylaxis to eat, which I think is like pretty good in compared to the wait times that there is. And so we went and did that, and the skin prick testing came back that she was allergic to egg, which I hadn't even trialed with her yet. So that's why they suggested the egg ladder to start at the baked section, because she was already tolerating, I was giving her gluten-free bread that had egg white powder baked into it. So I said to them, I said, I don't think she's allergic to egg because this is why. And then when she came as, yep, she's allergic to it. And I was like, you're kidding me. So they said to keep doing that. So we're doing the egg ladder. I haven't progressed any further with that because I'm waiting to see the review, because they didn't really say whether I can just keep stepping down the ladder or not, or whether you need to have that review. So I'm waiting to see for that, but they gave us the nuts that they also tested her for, because that was in the banana bread that we had, that she'd given her. And then they said, oh, well, what are the common nuts that you eat at home? We can try that. And I think skin prick testing isn't 100%, but it's gives you a bit of an idea, like a bit of an indication. So then we had to do the like a nut challenge, which was so stressful. So if anyone who hasn't had done a nut challenge or a food allergy challenge, you have to give them a small amount, and then 30 minutes later a bit more, and then 30 minutes later a bit more, and then 30 minutes later a bit more, until they get like quite a decent amount. And I think it takes about 2.5 hours to do. And during those times, my anxiety is at all-time high. I always do it when my husband's home, so I can step out and say, can you watch her? Because I can't. I'm so stressed. I'm looking at every single little thing thinking she's having a reaction. So yeah, I find them really stressful to do. And I think the ladder, I'll be very stressed when we have to move to the next step and that first sort of exposure. Anything that's sort of related to that, I get really anxious, and I think I'm already a bit of an overthinker anyway. But then I'm like, oh, is that a reaction? Oh, is that happening? So yeah, I think it is a very stressful thing. But as well for me, I was like, well, I'd rather know. I'd rather test it and know, as opposed to, I think it's harder if you, the unknown. So not knowing if she's allergic to something is harder. We've been I'll say we've been a bit slack, but partly because of, we're constantly trying to work out what's going on with her and making sure she's at a space. So we only found out she was lactose intolerant after I stopped breastfeeding. At about 10 months I stopped, and then we moved her to formula, and it was only, it took me about 6 weeks to work it out, because she she goes to childcare, so we're sick all the time. It was over winter, so she was having we had about a gastro, we had all these sorts of things, and I was like, is it that, or but we've worked out that she is lactose intolerant, which didn't come up earlier because I was breastfeeding and I'm lactose intolerant. So I think anytime you're trying to work something out, and so we've been a bit slack because I haven't done prawns yet. So watch this space. We've done fish. She's okay with fish, but and I guess in the family, my half brother is got allergic to all seafood. So I'm just like, oh, please don't be. But we still need to do that. But my anxiety just gets a little bit, ugh. And also trying to find a time, because you need a time when you're not doing anything. So it's been a bit challenging, but we've got a few more to go. It's always something.
There's always something, and that's not going to stop.
No, it's not.
You've also
sorry, go.
You've also written a book, Aneleise. Could you talk a little bit about your book?
Yeah, so I sort of touched on it earlier. So I needed something to try and help to explain to Mackenzie about food allergies and why we had to be so careful and why we had to change so much in our house, and for her to be able to understand a little bit better about I guess everything to do with food allergies. And I had a look around. There are some really amazing resources available. I wanted something that was probably less personalized and more about the reaction and why we had to be careful, to sort of explain that. But I also wanted to do it in a way that was child appropriate and child friendly, and not like, I never set out to, I don't want to scare children about it, but I think it's also important that they understand that the seriousness of food allergies. Something that we've kind of come across is particularly around like birthday parties and things, and I think a lot of parents would echo this, that it's really tricky because you go to a birthday party and there's a lot of food that your child can't eat. Sometimes there might not even be options for them to have anything, so I often will pack snacks in case. I do try to touch base with the person who's hosting to say, is there going to be some options available for my child to eat? And I guess I'm lucky at the moment because she's only 1, but once they get to the age of 3, I think it's tricky because my oldest, she wants to eat what the other kids are eating, and so it can be really challenging. So in my story, it's the duck who couldn't eat snails. I've got a copy here to show you. It's about a duck who gets invited to a birthday party, and the duck is allergic to snails, and they say, oh, I'd love to come, but I'm really worried I can't come because there's going to be snails at your party and I can't eat snails, and I'm allergic to them. So it sort of talks about why, what could happen. So it talks about, but again, I try to do it in a bit of a fun, not too scary way, but around, you can get hives, and you can have, so trying to use the same language that would be used for a child that has allergies. So my hope is that it can help other families to explain it to their children, but also to raise that broader awareness, I think. So, I'd love to see this in childcares and schools and things where there are children who have allergies. I went and did a reading at my girls' childcare, and, one of the kids was like, oh, I can't eat blueberries, and so it was really nice seeing them pull from what I had talked about and be able to be like, oh, that's like me because I can't do this. So having that, I guess, the story that resonates with them as well and makes them feel a little bit seen, because I think, sometimes you can get the, another food allergy, someone who can't, it's like, but it's not by choice. I think if anything, no one wants to have to deal with this at all. And it's something that, you get thrust into this life of having allergies. So trying to just create, I guess, a bit more awareness and a bit more inclusion as well for those children. When Zara had her first birthday, she was the only child there that had an allergy, but all the foods it was a whole gluten-free party, no egg, but I understand that not all families can cater to all allergies. But I think, having that fear of going to something where you are out of control of the food that's provided, is really challenging. And I mean, she's only one, so I can only imagine, if she doesn't grow out of these allergies, when she goes to school, like everyone's got wheat. I'm lucky at my childcare, they've excluded wheat from like her little surrounding, and they've really implemented a lot of things that will stop from that contamination. I'm also lucky the chef there, well, I'm not lucky that their children also have allergies, which is fortunate for me in the sense that they understand and they have that real understanding of, how important it is to be so diligent around it. So I feel a little bit, the first couple of weeks of her attending childcare, I was very anxious because I was like, oh, she's not in my care. I'm out of control of what she's eating. But they've been really wonderful. So I think, I've been lucky in that sense, but it's not always the case. And I know as she grows, I guess there's new challenges and hurdles that are going to come up around school, and then, going on school camps and, all these things that come up, and parties and So anyway, it's a never-changing space, I guess. And I think as soon as I sort of overcome one aspect of it, I know there's another one coming, but you just got to live in that moment of, all right, we've got this under control now. And I think for me, and I know I touched a bit about it around my mental health and anxiety, I went and saw a psychologist, which I think was really helpful for me to be able to validate that experience that I had and say, actually, what you went through was really stressful, and it's okay that you feel this way about this, because, that's a valid experience and a valid feeling. But as well, trying to come up with strategies for myself to be able to center myself and manage in the crisis of any kind of situation, and also to learn to say, all right, what is actually a crisis and what is not. So I found that really helpful for me. But also writing this book has allowed me to talk about it. So that for me has been very therapeutic, being able to talk and share my story. And I really hope, that someone will be able to get something from it, I guess. I guess there are a lot of what I've learned probably over this course of it is that I'm not alone in this as a parent with a child with allergies. And for children with allergies, they're not alone either. There are a lot of children, and it's really common. And I think, coming into, being a parent, you don't think about this as what, you could possibly be facing. So I think for me, it's taken a bit of time to process, and I'm very aware that I'm still at the start of this journey as a parent of a child with allergies. And for her as a child with allergies, this is going to be her life potentially. So, we're just sort of taking it day by day, and trying to make the best of it, I guess. And, if we can raise some awareness and create some, support and, get people talking about it, I think too, to really recognise and maybe change some attitudes about food allergies. That would be what I would hope for to come from this.
Definitely not alone in any of the ways that you feel around that.
Thank you.
With your book, what ages do you recommend?
Well, I've written 0 to 10 as my sort of age capture, but I think only because I would read anything to my like to Zara before she was 1. Once they get to sort of that, 2 or 3, they start to, talk about what they want to read. The book is in rhyme, which I personally love rhyme stories. And I think it's an easy sort of to read book. It's not complicated, but I think it could resonate with children up to probably the age of 10. Beyond 10, it's probably a bit childish for them, because it is sort of aimed at that sort of preschool, kindy, early starting school age. Yeah.
The book is around inclusivity of people with allergies. How important is that representation?
I think it's really important. I think they were saying, I've got to recall from the top of my head, but I think it's like it's either 1 in 10 or 1 in 4, which I know sounds crazy, but a lot of children have a food allergy these days. And I think, when I was in school, I don't really remember, and it's not to say it wasn't happening, but potentially also wasn't maybe as spoken about food allergies. I remember there being a lot of nut allergies when I was in school. But I think as we've come along, like there seems to be a wider scope, and maybe it's more testing, more understanding, whatever the reason is, but there seems to be a lot of children that have food allergies. And I think it's something that is maybe missing from like general education around things. And I don't know, I just think, and if you go to like a cafe and things, most cafes and things are pretty good, and restaurants, and will have labeling for things that are like allergy related. But I know that the labeling issue is a bigger issue than that, but not all places do. And even just down to like product labeling, if you go to the supermarket, the labels on the products, so hard to read. You got to spend ages looking at everything. They could change without any kind of warning. So I think, I think it's a really big issue, to be honest. And I think particularly for those it affects, it could be the difference between life or death. Sounds super dramatic, but honestly it could. So I think there's a lot of work in this space that could be done to make things a lot easier for people who have to live with food allergies.
Thank you. How did you come up with the name Dolly for the duck who can't eat snails?
Oh, the duck. I know, it's look, I don't really know, to be honest. I was playing around with lots of different names. I wanted something that kind of was fun. My girls call their babies Dolly, like they're little dollies. I don't know if that's where it's come from. But yeah, I don't know. I just was like, I thought you were going to ask me about Fred Weiner, because I was like, that's an interesting name also.
It is.
I'm not sure. It's just sort of something I thought was a bit funny and a bit fun. And, like I said, I wanted it to be, a little bit relatable. I also thought I didn't really want like a name that was common, I suppose, in terms of children's names. They say for a child to be able to relate to a story, particularly a children's book, using a character or an animal or, something is more actually relatable than depicting a child in a certain way. So if you were to use people in a children's book, a child that looks completely different to that might not relate to that child that looks that way. So, using, I guess, a character that had a name that was like a bit easy and a bit fun, and a lot of kids use that word, but not actually naming it like a name, like I wanted a D name, so it was like, something the duck. So, if I used a name that was more common, I was worried that then that might impact. I mean, it might not, but I thought it was a bit of a fun little spin on the dolly, because it's obviously not a doll, it's a duck.
As you've mentioned Fred Weiner, you're going to have to tell that story now too.
Well, look, honestly, I don't know. Where does my mind go? I'm not sure. I was thinking, I really liked the name Freddie the Frog, but then I wanted it to, I was like, is it a female? And anyway, I sort of did a bit of brainstorming, and I was like, I'm going to make it a girl, just because I have 2 girls. So I think it's very much from my experience that I've written this, but and then I was like, Fred Weiner, and I was like, whatever, we'll go with that. So, but interestingly, I was reading I read lots of children's books to my girls, and I was reading what story was it? One of my old favorites, and there was a Fred Weiner in it. And I was like, no way. So I don't know whether that's like subconsciously come back from my childhood, and who knows. Couldn't tell you, to be honest. So pulled it out of thin air.
Where can everyone find your book and purchase it?
Yeah, so you can get it from, so obviously I'm selling it on my website, so www.prosandfable.com. Allergy Life also has a link to my book on your website. Thank you very much. I've also got it stocked in a few little stores around Adelaide at the moment. So I'm based in South Australia in Adelaide. So if you're in South Australia, you can pick it up from there. On my website, I've got a link to some of the stockists actually, which is probably the best place to go because I try and keep that updated. And I'm slowly trying to get it into lots of different spaces. So if I guess if you're listening and you've got somewhere that you think you would like to see this book, reach out to me because I'm happy to approach different places. I've started to trying to get it into some libraries. So I know the library near me has it stocked, and I've spoken to them to try and get it a bit more across the board as well. But it's only been released in September, so it's still fairly new in terms of being released. So I have listed it with a bunch of different wholesale distribution places. So even if you go to your local library and ask, they should be able to get it for you. So you can borrow it via the library. And you can also get it on Amazon, lots of different places. You can, if you go online, I think, if you're listening from America, Barnes and Noble has it, and a bunch of other different places. So here and there.
Thank you so much, Aneleise, for sharing about your book, but also about your allergy journey with your daughters.
Thank you.
End with, is there anything that you would like to say to someone who's at the very beginning of their allergy journey?
Oh, yeah, such a good question. I guess my advice would be a few things. One, you're not alone. I think there's a really great community that has evolved from the allergy space. So whether it's reaching out via, Facebook, social media, there is a whole bunch of support groups. Finding specific ones as well to your allergy. So I've subscribed to a lot of gluten-free specific groups as well. And I think just remembering that it is scary, and it is, I think any kind of feelings that you're having, whether it's anxiety, fear, anger, all those feelings are completely normal in a space that this is not potentially what you've signed up for as, not that you get to sign up for things in life, but, not something that you potentially thought you might have to ever experience. So I guess just I would like to validate those feelings for you and to say that you are not alone. There is a lot of people and a lot of space that there are supports. And I think too, which I know I spoke about at the start, is around the medical space, it's really, really, really tricky. And I think advocacy is really important. So not just for yourself, but for your children, if they're experiencing food allergies, you need to really advocate in that space, only because it's such a, I think the space is really overwhelmed. There's not enough support and services for the sheer volume of people that need that. So the wait times are really long, particularly in public space. If you can advocate, and what I did before my first allergy appointment was I wrote a whole list of questions that I wanted to ask. And when I went into the appointment, and then luckily, they answered pretty much most of them, but having that list made me go, because they give you so much information when you go in, and the list really helped me to be like, okay, what else do I need to, when I've had time to think about, what do I need to know about? So that was really helpful. So yeah, I guess you're not alone. Your feelings are validated. You need to advocate for you and your child. I guess just hang in there, because I think, I wouldn't say it gets easier, but you get used to it. I think you get used to the changes in your life, and at the start it feels very overwhelming. But I think once you and some things still feel overwhelming, but certainly your day-to-day becomes a little bit easier once you get into the swing of it.
Thank you so much, Aneleise, for your time in talking with me today, and also for sharing your story for so many others.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
The discussions on Talking Allergies are here to support you or your loved one on your journey with allergies. The topics discussed here are not intended as medical instruction or as a substitute for advice by a qualified healthcare provider.